Now let me officially welcome you to this first webinar dedicated to sustainability in digital advertising, the very difficult word. And many companies in Slovakia have already started implementing their ESG policies. But however, I have that feeling that these activities are often not yet integrated into marketing and especially digital advertising marketing and processes. IAB Slovakia, who organized this webinar, as a part of IAB Europe, we have access to a valuable hub of knowledge, and this hub is led by Dimitris Base, who is with us today, and he's the ideal person to give us a comprehensive overview of this important topic. So please welcome Dimitris, data analyst and sustainability lead at IAB Europe. Dimitris, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Tasha. Thank you for the invitation and your time, everyone. Can you see the deck well?
Yeah, that's okay.
So my name is Dimitri. I'm IAB Europe's data analyst and sustainability lead. I head up IAB Europe Sustainability Standards Committee and also working groups on AI and programmatic. Before we get into an update on sustainability standards and what we're trying to achieve, just an overview of the committee. I work with a lot of our members, including Benjamin as well, across three main subgroups: definitions and business guidance, which looks at specific recommendations for the ecosystem, as well as our annual survey, methodology and frameworks, which looks at the methodology for estimating emissions, and I'll tell you more about that in a bit. And also we have policy and regulation that is more focused on the compliance piece and EU level sustainability regulation, like the CSRD, for example. Today, to take you through some of our work, I'm going to use a story that I've put together, which I think represents very well how the ecosystem is moving on sustainability. It's not complete yet, so we're about halfway through. 2 chapters have been written, 2 chapters are yet to be released, but I think it's a nice framework for us to understand what progress means for digital ad sustainability. So when we started working on this a couple of years ago, we identified some big problems with how the ecosystem was looking at its emissions. Some of these are still present, of course. We had advertisers that were beginning to consider the carbon footprint of their marketing activity. Maybe had done so already for a few months or a year. And this is something, of course, that's very positive and has created a huge incentive for work across the rest of the media supply chain. We had a lot of rapidly growing vendors that were aiming to reduce the environmental impact of digital ads. But we still had the near complete fragmentation in terms of methodologies. People weren't really used to exchanging data to power estimation of digital ad emissions. And also we had some local standardization efforts. We really lacked a global standard that would bring together all of these different learnings and create one baseline that everyone could use in order to get roughly equivalent figures, right? And the reason why you need equivalence when it comes to carbon footprint numbers of any product really is that you're able to optimize your supply chain and you're able to legitimately reduce your scope 3 emissions, so emissions from upstream and downstream in the value chain as much as you'd like. Now, in terms of solutions to this problem, we first started off by looking at all of the different models that already existed in the market. So going from in-house agency standards all the way to the work that Benjamin was involved in France with Alliance Digitale, all the way to specific vendors like Scope 3 or Impact Plus. We identified some key methodological differences between how all of these stakeholders looked at emissions. And we saw that there was a distinct data availability issue as well that was exacerbated by the lack of a common RFI. So different companies were requesting different data from different stakeholders, and this created a lot of friction in terms of getting together good numbers on carbon footprint. Of course, this is an area of the ecosystem where This friction can prevent progress, and we'd like to make it as smooth as possible for stakeholders to obtain robust figures on the carbon footprint of digital ad activations. To give you an example of all the differences we saw, on the left here you can see the different organizations we covered. We looked at industry associations. We looked at methodologies that have been put together specifically for one purpose, like BAFTA Albert that looks at productions. And on the right, you can see some examples of how these were different to each other. In this case, the difference that's highlighted is that some of these players were looking at only the electricity consumption required to do everything, while others were also accounting for the emissions that come from manufacturing and disposing of hardware when it comes to servers, user devices, or networking infrastructure. So long story short, we tried to identify some common denominators here in order to understand the fragmentation that we saw, and then start to work towards a global standard. And that is really where we are today, still fleshing out this common baseline. We've made solid progress, I would say, and we're looking to support convergence on a common actionable methodology for estimating digital ad emissions. Again, it's important for us to make it clear what each stakeholder needs to do, and also we need to take care of additional issues that will arise in the future after we have a common baseline, like the difficulty in sourcing and sharing some of this data, the fact that the methodology is still largely based on proxies, and therefore the numbers you get are a bit uncertain. And finally, in terms of next steps, we anticipate questions like how exactly can we trust this data, and also how can we exchange it in a smooth manner. So in terms of timelines on standardization, I would begin again back in 2023, where we analyzed all of these different methodologies. Then we started working with GARM to put together a first version of the Global Media Sustainability Framework. Specifically, some formulae were published for digital during Cannes of last year. And then after that, we still had a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that people can take these equations and use them in their day-to-day business. So we had questions about what kind of data everyone needs to share, how exactly to apply the formulae, etc., etc. We were very much looking forward to answering these with GARM as well, but as you know, GARM was disbanded after last summer, and therefore we have been working very closely with AdNet Zero following that. It's been a very fruitful collaboration, I would say, over the past 6 months now. Actually a bit longer, over the past 7 to 8 months now. And we've put quite a bit of work in this together with our methodology and framework working group. I counted at some point, I think it was something like 50 work days cumulatively in Q4 of 2024, which for Q4 in advertising is quite significant. And based on those contributions, we were able to put together a methodology that has been incorporated into the standard and is now out for review by AdNet Zero and IB Europe members until Cannes, and we expect it to be released there. So what does a GMSF need to do in order to really cater to the industry's needs in terms of a standard for emissions? Again, we need comparable and equivalent environmental figures so that each stakeholder can include those figures in whatever optimizations they want to do that take environmental impact into account. We need to provide concise and feasible guidance on sourcing the data required. So as a publisher, as an agency, as an ad tech player, you need to know exactly what's required from you in terms of data to apply the GMSF. And we also need to allow for enough flexibility to enable applications of the GMSF in different contexts where you might not have all the data. And that is why we've come up with certain default values that can effectively substitute the data you would need to use the GMSF in cases where that data is missing. That kind of builds up to what we call fairness when it comes to the GMSF and using it, fairness when it comes to how carbon footprint KPIs are used in the ecosystem. And of course, there's a lot more that goes into that, which I'm not going to dive into today. But keep in mind that as we're doing all of this work, we don't only care about how the methodology works. There are certain design principles, I would say, that are quite important for us to adhere to. For example, yes, GMSF is the Global Media Sustainability Framework. Thank you for that clarification. For example, we want to make sure that when you're using better data, you're getting lower carbon footprint figures in order to incentivize people to use better data. So the methodology works as follows. We have storage that looks at the storage of masters bundles, so all of the different variants of a creative across different activations. We have localized versions with or without legal language, etc. We have selection, where we look at the buying and selling of digital ad space. This includes programmatic, direct buy, end-to-end platforms, etc. We have delivery, the transmission of the actual ad to the user. And finally, consumption, which is about the device the user is on effectively. And if you want to have a read through the full methodological proposal, I would go to our website under the Sustainability Hub. You can find that as well. Which brings me now on to Leaf. It's a new platform that we've put together specifically to house utilities that we have built while we've been doing this work in the Sustainability Science Committee. We've got two at the moment. I'm going to focus on the second one that's called Open Greenhouse Gas. These utilities are free to our members and available to non-members on a subscription basis, and they enable us to inform the market, give them something tangible as a derivative of the work that we're doing, and also get feedback and test out new things. Now, what Open Greenhouse Gas does is it effectively lets you use the standard, the GMSF, in a very lean, simple way. So this isn't as complex as the GMSF can get, especially if you're working with a third-party vendor and they're doing things like ingesting data from the bid stream. But it is something you can use in order to become more accustomed to how the GMSF works and get some basic insights about how it estimates emissions. So I've got some screenshots here, but I think it'd be better to maybe show you something live. Before we go into that, here's another key thing to keep in mind: what data you need across all of the different stages of the GMSF. I'm happy to share this also with you after I'm done. But for now, let's have a look at how it works. I have here a test I put together when I was doing a similar webinar for IAB Switzerland the other day. I think it works quite well to go through everything. So in storage, we have as the main inputs the payload of this masters bundle, and then where exactly this masters bundle is stored. We have 4 different mediums, and you essentially input the number of copies on each. For selection, you can account for open web programmatic, social, as well as direct buy from a publisher. You can see some figures down at the bottom. It's effectively, if you want to look at programmatic, you need to use the ads.txt lines for the publisher. If not, those are not required. And we also need a region and location from you in order to account for the proper conditions. Under delivery, we have effectively inputs that have to do with the actual creative itself, so the payload, and also the networks through which it is sent. So how many of your users are on a fixed connection versus a mobile connection? And then finally, under consumption, the main input is device type. So what kind of devices are you reaching, and view time. So this is an example where, let's say you're an agency and you have the full picture of the campaign, you can add everything in. But that's not the only case in which Open Greenhouse Gas is useful. Actually, we were testing different setups that would be useful for a publisher specifically the other day, and I thought that would be interesting to look at as well. So to show you more specifically, oh, sorry, it took a second to load there. We tested out per 1,000 impressions what the emissions estimate looks like for a banner ad and an outstream video ad unit effectively. And we also looked at some basic numbers for delivery, which you can get if you have access to some data from your ad server, for example. So really, Open Greenhouse Gas is a sandbox that lets you try out the GMSF and implement it with some simple aggregate data. And it really helps us both communicate how the GMSF works and also deliver to our members something more tangible to accompany the big, methodology document that we've produced. So going back to our deck here, the next step is really looking at trusted data exchange. That is something we expect to tackle in the second half of the year with AdNet Zero. But that's not the end of the story, because even if we've verified that people are using the GMSF correctly and the data can be trusted, we still see some staggered progress across channels because digital is going a bit faster. We think that might cause some issues in terms of cross-channel optimization. Plus, not everyone is used to sharing this data as of yet, and we don't have full supply chain transparency either, which can create some problems in terms of understanding your supply chain's carbon footprint. So just to back that up with some statistics, this is from our annual State of Readiness survey. A big part of the ecosystem is still calling for external verification when it comes to this work. This isn't directly relevant if you're just getting started now in the Slovakian market, but if you've done some work already, and especially if you exchange any data with global players, we do expect verification to be more of an issue for you in the coming years. Also, we see that regulatory compliance is overtaking clients as a driving force. Not sure if that's going to be the same next year because of the simplification we're seeing, but if it is the same, that also comes with a different set of standards for disclosures. And then finally, we're seeing a lot of businesses that are actually including these figures in their environmental reports. And you might think, okay, that's going to be some big ad tech company only. But no, actually, I was just doing a podcast the other day with one of the big vendors that estimate emissions in advertising. And some advertisers have their ad activations overall as the second largest pool of emissions after packaging. So again, at the point at which these figures are making it into corporate sustainability reports, more attention will be paid on the methodology that powers those numbers. So what does the Holy Grail look like? What are we working towards at the end of the day? We want a system where media decision-making can be informed by an environmental footprint across channels. We want some smooth flow of data between publishers, ad tech agencies, and advertisers, and we want this data to be trusted. But that's not the end of the story, because, of course, ESG is not just environmental sustainability. We just started a new work stream looking at social impact, for example. And also, environmental sustainability is not just operational emissions, which is what we're looking at now. Right? We want to include the impact of consumption driven by this advertising. There are other industry bodies already working on that. And we also want to look at the impact of the media that advertising funds, which is why we're currently evaluating things like misinformation, also in the context of climate misinformation, for example. So if we look at where IB Europe is going in terms of the next few years. Specifically, this is informed by this slide more than any other slide from our annual survey. We're working heavily on industry standards because that's the main objective right now, get a standard out that is operational and can be used by the ecosystem. We're working on education. We have a training program designed for people with little to no background in sustainability. And in terms of transparency, we're currently working with a lot of our members in order to figure out how they could disclose some additional data about their environmental performance, and it's a very exciting conversation. So at the end of the day, to wrap things up, we expect more contributed data and less reliance on proxies in the GMSF in the future, more questions about verification and the robustness of this data, and finally, potentially some more holistic perspectives on ESG. So going beyond just what's in the GMSF at the minute and looking at ESG issues with a kind of wider lens. And that wraps it up from my side. I think I'll happily pass things along to Benjamin.
Thank you, Dimitris. It was really interesting and a nice overview where we are in IB Europe. And now I believe that Benjamin Davey, the sustainability director at Teets, a technology company, and also our member of IAB Slovakia, show us practical side of implementing sustainability in digital advertising in Teets. So Benjamin, you can start. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Dimitris. So hello, everyone. Benjamin Davey, as it was already been said, looking after sustainability at TIDS. And today I will share about our journey on the environmental sustainability specifically, and how we concretely leverage campaign carbon reporting today. So very quickly, TIDS is an omni-channel platform for the open internet. We work with web publishers and media owners to monetize their content. And our focus is to provide advertisers and agencies meaningful outcomes without sacrificing quality. And sustainability concretely is part of a responsible advertising approach that considers the support of quality journalism, going back to the climate misinformation piece. It's something that's important to us as well to include as part of our ESG journey. But today, focusing on the environmental side of things, I wanted to share about how do we approach this. And we started a while ago, actually in 2020, with several internal studies exploring available methodologies to estimate the impact of our digital advertising service. And our goal really was to better understand the footprint of our platform and service, and also to identify areas of improvement. And we first looked at how we can evaluate the footprint of cloud resources, because our platform is running on a cloud infrastructure. And at that time, no cloud provider was able to share carbon emission data. And as we discovered, there were significant gaps in the information that we were able to obtain. We decided to work with life cycle assessment experts. I will share very quickly some outputs and how we perform this analysis. So a life cycle assessment is a study that estimates the environmental impacts of all the elements involved in for our digital advertising service. It evaluates the impact from a specific functional unit. So in our case, we evaluated video impressions on smartphones in France, so a very specific context. And the study considers the whole life cycle of the involved equipment and infrastructure. So on the left, you have the different stages of the life cycle that are considered. So it takes from the manufacturing to the end of life of each equipment involved. And for each step, the impact is qualified on several criteria, not only on carbon emissions. So concretely, we included in this study our cloud infrastructure, where we are building our platform, as well as the network infrastructure that sits between our platform and our users that are displaying the ads, and also including the user devices as well that are rendering the ads. And for the estimation, we use proxy metrics that represent how much compute storage and network resources we use to run our platform. So this was a study that was done before all the work that Dimitris has shared. So the results I'm sharing here are valid for the TIDS specific context we analyzed, but it's to give you the order of magnitude. So we estimated that 1,000 impressions in this context, so video delivery in France on a smartphone, would emit 67 grams of CO2 and consume 22 liters of water, so including all the things that I mentioned before, and attributing them at an impression level. And knowing this, next, our goal was to identify the main areas where we could reduce and optimize. And again, the uncertainty of these numbers is quite high because at the time we lacked primary data from our cloud service providers. So we had to use estimations on several steps of the calculations. So here we have a graph on the left that represents how the impacts are distributed, and you have several impacts that are listed here. You have climate change, so greenhouse gas emissions. You have metallic and water resources, the consumption of the resources, and also primary energy consumption. And this is helping us to understand, to help address hotspots. And we see that quickly the footprint of our service is driven by user devices and also the network infrastructure. These are key hotspots, even though they are outside of our managed infrastructure. So if I was to purely look at things from a corporate reporting, I wouldn't consider these as the primary things to look at, even though when we do the study, we see that this is where most of our impacts are. So we were able to identify these hotspots, but also we estimated what happens on the demand side partners that are working with TIDs and processing the bid requests we send to them. And considering these partners, we estimated that if we include the processing of our bid opportunities, it would have the same impact as our own operations. So the level of computing that we process on our side, we estimated that by sending opportunities to demand side partners, it will generate the same amount of impact. So on our side, it highlighted the fact that we need to optimize the programmatic processes and make sure that when we send an opportunity, it's worth it. So knowing the hotspots, it was very helpful to prioritize engineering efforts. So I just mentioned programmatic processes. These processes have both a significant networking footprint, but also generate computing on our side and on our demand side partner side. And here, just to illustrate how things are currently done in the ad tech industry, which is something common now, it's that we use machine learning to filter at different stages of the programmatic process to remove the opportunities where we predict there won't be any interest from our partners. And this is saving resources on both our side and on our partner side. And the cost of the prediction is marginal compared to the gains that we get. So it's a very interesting tool. And knowing this was also, this has a significant footprint, it helped prioritize the initiatives on our side to improve the performance of the existing models, but also to create new optimization layers. And another area where we invested is to address the user device hotspot, is the creative asset optimization. And the goal here really is to get the right balance between the perceived quality for the user viewing the ad and the performance and how an ad is loaded. The lighter the ad, the better the performance. And these two examples, these are behind the scenes initiatives, but ultimately we wanted to get our client on board in that sustainability journey. So the second step was to experiment campaign carbon evaluation solutions that appeared as we were progressing on these studies. And we started with the first solutions that appeared in the market in the end of 2021 with Impact Plus. And back then, simply having an evaluation was a long process and a bit complex because people were not used to work with carbon data. And it left little time to think about reduction experiments. So we deployed this on a larger scale and did a lot of test and learn, and then decided to invest and make this carbon evaluation available for each and every campaign we run, and also make it free of charge so that we can focus on testing reduction strategies and not have this not prevent people from acting because they were not having access to the data. So to illustrate, since the end of 2023, we share to our platform users carbon evaluation data provided by the third-party Scope 3, and it's available for all campaigns using our TIDS Ad Manager interface. And you can see here on the right the dedicated dashboard that we built for that. And on top of this overview of the emissions, of the intensity per 1,000 impressions and how these emissions are distributed, we also expose the carbon data in our reporting engine so that you can easily compare the carbon metrics with other media KPIs so that it's helping to optimize doing the right choices to optimize on both carbon and maintain great performance. And when talking about optimization, in 2023, at the same time, a lot of effort has been spent by the industry to define best practices, contributing to lower the footprint of digital advertising. So here I listed the existing publications from different sustainability task forces, including the IAB Europe, of course. And among the recurring themes, you will find the following recommendations: streamline the media value chain and the technology stack. The more platforms involved in the process, the higher the emissions potentially. Optimizing assets and how they are delivered, going back to what Dimitris mentioned regarding the inputs of the global media sustainability framework, how heavy an asset is and on which type of network it is delivered. These are key inputs. And also include sustainability considerations in media planning and buying. The goal is to avoid having impressions that do not lead to any result, avoiding the waste of impressions. So to make it more concrete, I will share now how we are using this at TIDS with our clients. So for a specific brief that we look at, we can evaluate different optimization options. So for example, on the creative side of things, we can select different formats that would be aligned with the campaign's objective. The goal is to do some pre-flight evaluations of how a creative will be evaluated from a carbon perspective. And during the campaign, we can further optimize by prioritizing the most balanced creative options, looking at the carbon that they generate per outcome that they also enable. On the media side of things, we can review both, again, the performance and the carbon KPIs to curate the inventory, and again, towards the best emissions per outcome ratio. We can also apply best practices to target energy efficient contexts, so small devices, Wi-Fi connected users, and use the right buying models to minimize the waste of impressions. So these are some examples, and to help assess the emission reduction potential for these best practices, we have the following examples here, where we can say to a client that, for example, if he switches from a 30-second creative to a 15-second one, he can expect a reduction overall of 10 to 20% without compromising media performance. And all of these options can be cumulated. Some of the options will potentially reduce the reach of the campaign, and it's the main trade-off to consider. And that's more specifically the case when creating the inventory or targeting specific contexts such as Wi-Fi connected users. Overall, we have many case studies, even published by the IAB Europe, that have demonstrated that these best practices shouldn't harm media performance, so it's worth testing them. Then to make sure that we use the carbon metric efficiently, it seemed important to us to look at carbon data in different ways. First, of course, we look at the carbon intensity per impression. It's the basic metric metric to help comparison with benchmarks, but that's usually not enough. We recommend using a carbon efficiency metric, looking at the emissions per outcome, as I mentioned before, so that we include the media performance in each carbon optimization decision. And as well, from a corporate sustainability perspective, it's important to keep an eye on the carbon per budget spent, so that we make sure that the optimizations are not leading to rebound effects. So with the same budget generating more emissions, even though we optimize at carbon per impression level. And finally, it's important to look at the reach, the scale accessible when applying the best practices, so that we make sure that we would be able to apply them on a larger scale. And to illustrate, here we have an example where we helped a client optimize their attention performance while lowering emissions. And for this specific case, we optimized the inventory, the creatives, and applied some best practices, such as the 100% Wi-Fi delivery. And we were able to both optimize the attention and reduce the carbon intensity. So comparing to optimized versus non-optimized, we improved the media KPI, and as well the carbon intensity was lowered. So when we combine these two results, it reduced the emission per seconds of attention, which was the hybrid metric that we came up with for this case, by 22%. And of course, this type of strategy will depend on the campaign objective and also the current performance. Some clients already apply best practices without knowing it, so you may have a different starting point depending on each case. And that's it for me for this short session. I hope it was helpful, and thank you for your attention. I also want to thank the IAB Slovakia and the IAB Europe and Dimitri specifically for enabling a continued progress on the sustainability topic for our industry.
Thank you, Benjamin. For me, it looks like a science, this environmental approach through your company's processes. And my question is, for example, how many people work in your team on all these processes, for example?
So dedicated people, we are two.
Okay.
Working on both corporate and product sustainability. But then it's a shared responsibility within the company. The goal is not to have this, sorry, I'm still sharing maybe. No. It's not to have something only supported by two people as a silo. Is to have these sustainability initiatives deployed in all the departments. So having sustainability leads in engineering, in all departments really, but concretely we are two people.
Yeah. Do you think that you have some competitive advantage as your company is like so responsible in this ESG practice? Like if advertisers, for example, are asking if you are doing this, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If they are interested in, like.
Yeah, of course we see the ESG questions in our RFIs, request questionnaires that we receive, gaining more and more space within the questionnaire. So it's a topic of attention. It's also helping companies to address their own ESG agenda. So a huge part of their ESG agenda is to work with their value chain, and as a provider, we have to also help them achieve some objectives. So of course, it's helping. It's contributing to tighten the relationship with these companies. It's also helping to win some budgets, I believe. It depends on how each company is prioritizing this topic. But of course, helping reinforce relations.
Yeah, nice to hear this. Yeah, perfect. Okay, maybe I will have some space for question from the audience. If somebody has something, please raise your hand or give the question in the chat. I hope it's working, that chat, but I think that Dimitri's added something, so it should be should work. My question is also on you, Dimitris, about some legislative topic. We know there are some directives from European Union. There are quite difficult names. Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, for example. But also we know that these are dedicated for very large companies. And my question is if you think that there is a plan to extend this kind of legislation to medium and small-sized enterprises as well. How do you see the future?
So as part of the omnibus package, the thresholds are increasing now, they're not decreasing. That means that fewer companies are subject to these directives than initially was the plan. This is all part of Europe being more competitive, according to the legislator. And the truth is that this does take away some burdens from a lot of companies with respect to cost and investment in this area. I would stress that at the end of the day, if a company really aligns with sustainability as a core value, good work will happen there. When we run our annual survey, regulation is very important, but also things like, as an employer, catering to the attitudes of your employees. And if you look at, Benjamin's work, and a lot of this work is Benjamin. He's very humble, but he does do quite a bit of this. This goes beyond the corporate sustainability report, right? I mean, if you look at the best practice implementation, like avoiding inefficiencies in programmatic, if you look at the hybrid metrics, trying to align, sustainability impact with the actual outcomes that the advertiser is looking for in a campaign, that's something that's really important for a lot of complicated reasons, avoiding, second-order implications and rebound effects. But that's never going to be found in, the ESRS that's the standard that underpins CSRD. So what I would say is fewer companies are going to be subject to these, this year or next year than we initially thought. But companies that want to be leaders in their respective market segments can also build on that moat by doing very good, robust work on sustainability.
Thanks. And what do you think, what will be the impact of very fast-growing usage of AI on this whole environmental space?
Yeah, so I think organizations ought to manage their emissions inventories in a way that's aligned with their commitments and their reduction pledges, regardless of what technology is really popular, this year or next year, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like that when it comes to such large-scale questions, we need to go back to the basics and look at whether, as an organization, you're moving to net zero and whether your business activities are aligned with that as well. Back in 2023, it was more of a conversation item, whether your contribution overall is negative or positive as a third-party vendor, for example. These days, we don't hear about it that much, potentially also because a lot of the vendors are using AI to perform a big chunk of their operations, and that's quite environmentally intensive, not just looking at emissions, but also things like water consumption. I think, again, responsibility is something that goes beyond just operational emissions and product level emissions. Organizations need to be looking at their offerings and whether those are aligned with their carbon footprint goals long term.
Yeah, thank you. I prepared some poll with the question. I don't know if you see that. So please try to answer.
I can't see the questions. It says error when clicking on view all results.
You can't see.
No,
Or you can see.
we cannot see. We cannot see them.
I don't know. So maybe it doesn't work. I prepared for first time. I'm there, Tatiana Gasparova. It should be in the chat, maybe. No.
Yeah, we can see the little box, but we can't see the results and the questions.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it doesn't work, I think. Because there are just the free answers. So management control, share poly.
Maybe you can do it live. What's the question?
Maybe, but my colleague was asking some question just before this meeting about what was the main reason to attend this webinar, and 55, almost 56% was the reason was for exploring new ideas. Because, as I mentioned, I think that in Slovakia there are no so many companies which have already implemented ESG also in digital marketing, and we are planning to incorporate sustainability into our digital marketing campaigns. Just 8% was the answer, and we are already implementing sustainability in our digital marketing 36%. So just the 36% from the people who were planning to attend this webinar answers that they are already implemented some ESG rules in a digital marketing. Barbara Grausova, it's working. I can see both question and result. Maybe, Barbara, the reason is that you are in my team, so...
There's more than me in the poll that already asked the questions.
Yeah, why
there are 4 people, maybe.
There are 4 people, okay. So, yeah, we have just a few of answers, so I don't know.
Might be a thing with browser Teams versus the app.
I don't know. No, never mind. We will try it after this webinar, and this is the last call for a question or for some information. Also from the attendees side, you want to add to this webinar or your, for example, experience, if you have some.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a market where the figures would probably look like your figures in terms of progress so far. I'm Greek. I would say if you want to get started, go through some of the industry work. There's a lot there to ingest. Have someone from your ad ops team or an engineer do that with you. Figure out if you'd like to work with a third-party vendor for anything and what you'd like to do in-house. And also explore whether there's demand for that kind of thing with local clients, because there might be, especially if they're part of a bigger global company, because those global companies are definitely part of the CSRD and all associated disclosures. That's it from my side.
Yeah, but I personally think when you want to succeed in this field, and I think you need some dedicated person who will be really responsible for the agenda. So I think it should be the first step to hire somebody, or to have somebody with this agenda in his regular job. So as Benjamin Davey, and then we can see where can be the results.
But it's interesting to have also internal teams that move to a sustainability role. This is what happened for me as well. So if you have people that are knowledgeable of the business, that are eager to get to this topic, that's ideal, I would say, because you already know everything you need to know. So you can leverage the knowledge that is out there and apply it to your business.
Yeah, thank you. So if nobody has some other question, I would like to close this webinar. I would like to say a big thanks to Dimitris to be with us today, and also to Benjamin. And I hope we will see you someday on some other webinar, maybe with some other topics, and to see how we accelerate all this time and all this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.